Hello, everybody. Welcome to the practice of being human. Today, I get to have a conversation that feels very full circle and deeply personal because I have had the pleasure of knowing Liz Anthony and her family since she was a young girl. I remember Liz, I can picture her now, always in motion, a bright light, whip smart, outgoing, high achieving, a big, big heart, and always beloved. But it wasn't until we both found ourselves, my family and dear Liz, living in Colorado, that I had the gift of really getting to sit down with Liz and get to know her. And this happened over some Brummel home cooked meals and some long and meaningful conversations in our kitchen. It was during those visits that I found myself just loving her and appreciating so much of what was happening on her insides and appreciating the journey, the fact that she was as vulnerable as she was, and also so real. Her depth, kindness, and really beautiful complexity was quite remarkable to me. So you get to know dearest Liz today, and I'm going to give a little bit of background as to what she's doing right now and also what her journey has been leading to where she is currently. So Liz is now Chief of Staff at Half Days. It's a woman-founded outdoor apparel brand in Boulder, Colorado. Her professional path is as impressive as it is, I think, purposeful. A Notre Dame grad, go Irish, philosophy major, Oxford MBA, a consultant at McKinsey, and then a few strategic roles in mission-driven companies, and now helping lead a brand that's all about making the outdoors more inclusive and empowering for women. Today's conversation, though, isn't just about Liz's impressive resume. It's really about the gorgeous under construction human behind the titles and accolades. And we'll talk about what it is and what it was like to hit some deep valleys in college, how adversity shaped you from the inside out, and what it looks like to lead with both strength and softness. My intention for this conversation is really to offer you, dear listeners, a glimpse into Liz's journey, not just for inspiration, but for insight and connection. I want you to hear your own story in hers and to be reminded that purpose is born not just in the clarity, but in confusion. So, with that, let's begin to peel back the layers and with a few questions, spacious questions to guide us into the heart of Liz's story. And I'm going to just start with the more that inner shift for you, which was thinking about how you've always been known, as I described earlier, as driven and magnetic and service oriented. But I know college brought some real adversity, including health challenges for you. So, can you walk us into that season of your life and what cracked you open and how it changed the way you understood yourself and the path you were on?
Yes. Thank you. And I just love talking with you, so I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so glad.
Um, so yes, as you mentioned, I went into college, very much your sort of typical high achieving high schooler, without really having faced much adversity at all. Like you look back at your college essays of like adversity you faced, and it's like I didn't have much to write about. But 2 weeks into my freshman year at Notre Dame, I was diagnosed with lupus. And it started with just kind of a rash on my cheeks. And for those that don't know, lupus is an autoimmune disorder that basically causes your body to attack itself, and it's very unpredictable. So it can attack pretty much any organ in your body. And so as an 18-year-old, I was obviously very confused by this diagnosis and a little scared, but honestly a little bit just kind of like, how could this possibly be the case for me? Like I played sports year round in high school. I was really active. I felt like I had plenty of energy. Like it didn't feel like any of the things that I was diagnosed with were really lining up with what I was being told. But very quickly it did start to line up. And my first couple of years of college, they looked very different than what I had ever hoped or expected they would look like. I just kind of started to deteriorate physically in a way that was like very scary and very unexpected for anyone in my life, including me. And ultimately kind of led to me losing like 40 pounds in a semester at college, which, as you can imagine, is like terrifying both for
Hmm.
me and for my parents and all those things. And I really didn't know what was going on. Like, that's not a typical lupus symptom. I knew that I was exhausted and that I was losing my hair and that I had all these other things that were more lupus specific, but the weight loss was really unexplained. And a lot of people thought that I just had an eating disorder. And so I would go to the doctor all the time, and I'd just be told, like, it's in your head, you need to
Mm.
eat. And it really all culminated with being tested for celiac by an older male doctor who, was just doing his job, but did a biopsy on my stomach, which, by the way, is not always the most effective way of diagnosing celiac, and we can come back to that.
Okay.
Did the biopsy and told my mom that I was just anorexic and needed to eat. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I am going crazy. Like, really started to question myself and how I was feeling. And even though I knew that I didn't have any sort of like body image issues at the time or any like reason that I would be having an eating disorder, I just kind of convinced myself, like, well, I guess this is the truth because this is what every doctor has told me. And so I moved to Ghana for 3 months for the summer, where I ate white bread every day and a lot of like packaged foods because that's what was kind
That's
of
what you do.
me. Yeah. And it ended with me like coming home from Ghana with a raging kidney infection and
Mm.
almost immediately being diagnosed with celiac. And that was like a very interesting moment for me because it did confirm so much of what I knew, but it really just kind of started my path towards healing and becoming more of like the person that I was prior to all of these issues, which took much longer than the getting sick part. Like the getting sick part was quick and the healing part was quite long. And so it took me probably 4 or 5 years to actually gain back all the weight I lost and to do what I considered like restoring my health, which I decided to do all through like natural and non-traditional methods, which I'm happy to talk about. But to answer your question about kind of like what it did to me, I think it was the first time in my life that I had really ever questioned myself. I grew up with parents that really just instilled a lot of confidence in me and taught me that, like, what I believed about myself was true, what I believed I could do was true. And it felt like this experience in college was the first time that, like, I had really set my mind to just being healthy and just like trying to figure this out, and it wasn't working.
Mhm.
And it was very rattling to go through so many years of being questioned and questioning how I was feeling because of what I was hearing from doctors and things like that. And then you add on top of that the whole dynamic of this being in college. So
Of
all my friends
course.
were like going out and partying and whatever. And I was like spending most nights at home at my family's house because I was exhausted and sick and just kind of a shell of a human. But ultimately, like, I emerged from that in my post-college years a completely different person that I would have been otherwise. And I think the way that it really shaped me as I look at who I am today is just this unwavering sense of confidence in myself. And
Mhm.
as I've made choices that have felt in some ways non-traditional or different from what other people expected of me or whatever that might be, it always came from a place of really trusting myself and listening to what my body and mind and heart were telling me. And I feel like I was like really reinforced in that belief in college, just kind of ultimately knowing that something was wrong and being right about that after being questioned for so many years. And it also really opened me up to the characteristics about myself that I value so much now and that aren't the things that are the most obvious from looking at my resume, which is that I feel like I connect with people about the times in their life that have been hard, or I'm able to go a little bit deeper with people about things that they struggle with or just the things that like really matter to them, in ways that I don't think I would have been able to if I hadn't had that experience myself.
Mhm.
And it's something that I think like makes me different and special and that I love about myself now. And so it's obviously easy to say with, 10 years of hindsight or whatever that might be, but I think it just really made me into a much more like full and like vibrant human being than I would have been otherwise.
Mhm. And it helps you, as you said, connect with other people and connect both to their pain, their struggle, their humanness, in a way that you probably would not have had the insight, the awareness, that real sense of knowing
Yeah.
because of your own experience. And so such an excavation for you at such an early age, like how highly unique to what most people are experiencing in college. So I would think that was probably very isolating for you and you were really walking a solo journey. Is
Hmm.
that, did you have anyone who was able to really validate, see you? I mean, I know your family was on board, but I'm sure also for your family, when you're hearing from the outside all of these things and it goes on, it's like you maybe start to question. I don't know, but I would think it's just got to be a very difficult walk for everyone.
Absolutely. I give my parents so much credit because they were so good to me. And I can
Mm-hmm.
only imagine it was like the most terrifying experience in the world to watch your child go through what I was going through. And then to your
Yeah.
point, want to believe them, but also just want what's best for them, want to get them help, and things like that. So my family was amazing. And I did have great friends. I was really lucky. I had a small group of friends that it felt like they gave me this sort of almost undeserved knowing in my first 2 weeks at Notre Dame that they carried with me through like the rest of my life. And so for the first like 2 weeks when I was just this normal, regular college kid, I developed these friends and they ended up being my roommates for all 4 years and are still some of my best friends today and just like really incredible that I had them. But I actually started like a small Instagram and blog right when I, like around the time that I was graduating from college to do exactly what you are suggesting, which is like connect with people who actually had some sort of insight into what I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is sort of like the good side of social media that I think all of us know is possible. And now we're seeing mostly the dark sides. But when I was in college, the only people that I ever heard of that had gone through anything similar to what I was going through were like people on Instagram who were posting about it. And like a random girl in college in California who was experiencing something really similar. And then these women, even in like their late 20s and 30s, who were getting diagnosed with autoimmune diseases and posting about it. Like, I just didn't know anyone. And so I created this little Instagram blog to connect with them. And it was a really fun way of just like bringing new people into my life that could really understand where I was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I stepped away from it a long time ago. And I felt like really great about that. Like it was really fun when I did it. But that was really important for me was just to like hear that other people were going through something similar and those friendships were really important to me at that time in my life. And I think as I've moved away from that time, I've also in many cases like those friendships we don't have the same connection that we had at the time. And I think that's okay too, just like knowing that friendships serve a kind of phase and purpose when you're really connecting on an experience you have and that there are other friendships that also maybe weren't as close at the time that have come back full circle as those friends have gone through hard things and now we're able to kind of better understand what I went through at the time and I can understand what they're going through now.
Mm-hmm.
So really kind of beautiful circle of life on the friendship front.
How does that, I'm curious how that impacts romantic relationships for you. Because, and maybe this is a little too personal, but I'm really curious because I think considering what you've shared and what you have lived in your 31 years, you are quite special. And well, I've always known this, but there is something so unique to your experience that I think it would be hard to find a partner and someone who really gets it and also can match and kind of be as evolved because I think there is an evolution that takes place that's very organic when you are faced in with the challenges and the adversity and just that excavation that you had at such a young age and stage. I'm just curious because I think even in the work that I do with clients, when they do this work, Liz, they will often say, I wish my partner or I wish my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my friends understood this work and were able to meet me where I am. So I'm curious with your friendships, I get that. Also, I'm curious if that have you found that to be the case in romantic relationships?
Yeah, I definitely have. I mean, I think there's a lot of things about dating in your 20s that are complicated.
We
So
could
I
do
wouldn't,
another podcast
yeah,
episode about
exactly.
that.
I wouldn't,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't attribute it all to this, but I do think I struggled a lot in my 20s to find a partner that I felt like I could just be 100% myself with.
Hmm.
And I think like I met a lot of really great people who they are great people. They just weren't the right person for me. And I didn't
Yep.
feel like I could be my full self. And they didn't necessarily want me to be my full self with them. That wasn't what they were looking for.
That's
And
so telling right there. Like that's
yeah.
such a powerful line. Oh my gosh. If everyone heard
Um,
that.
yeah. And
So
that's
good.
like, it's also, I think I learned to take that a lot less personally, which is like hard. It's hard to tell people. And it probably didn't always feel true in the moment. But like when you just realize like you will never be happy with someone unless you're your very full authentic self. And if that's not what they're looking for, like
Mhm.
thank God you figured that out sooner rather than later and get out. Um, but luckily I met my boyfriend Ben around this time last year. And I think the thing that made him stand out from everyone else I'd ever met to me, like from day one, was just how much he like wanted to know me, like
Mhm.
all in. And there was no part of me that was holding back. And probably a lot of that has to do with like also me just being older and more confident and feeling really comfortable in who I was. But there was never a part of me that I was scared to share with him. And
Mhm.
there are definitely parts of me that are not his bread and butter in terms of like what he's most comfortable talking about. Like having a really deep conversation about like what I went through in college. Like he always wants to listen and learn, but it also isn't like he is used to doing that every day because most men are not. And also,
Mhm.
frankly, most people are not.
Right.
I think it's like the willingness and the want to know about me and the want to like meet me where I am and give me what I need that is the most important.
I think
And
also capacity. I think
yeah,
that's a real thing as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah. And like just wanting to listen and like having the capacity to do that. And then for me, it's also just learning that like I mean, there's never been anything I've asked of Ben that he hasn't been able to give for me. So I will say that. But also, I have all these other people in my life. And
Mhm.
so I'm not asking for every little thing from him. Like I know that I
Mhm.
have all these other friends, and I have some friends who have experienced health problems. And so when I'm going through something related to my health, I'm more likely to get the reaction that I really hope for from them because they have experienced it and they know what I'm going through. I just think it's really important that like you build a whole cabinet of people and you understand that like one person is not meant to give you the perfect reaction to everything you're going through. And the
Mhm.
most important thing is to your point, like their willingness to listen, their capacity to grow with you and their like want to do that, but not expecting that they're going to be every single thing for every issue that you have.
Absolutely. And I think you just said the listening. I think that is a skill. And I think in every real relationship that's worth its salt, listening has to be something that both really are practiced at and skilled
Yeah.
at to
Yeah.
really have that kind of connection. And I think the sharing of life is it's wonderful to have more of that bounty and that sense of having a repertoire of really close friends, family, and having this person that you're really enjoying being in relationship and sharing the road. It's really sharing the journey. I
Right.
always love to say too, it's not as though anyone is ever better than or less than another as much as there's just this variation and iteration of evolution and this sense of like growth and a desire for that. So let's move on to knowing and leading yourself. So here we are. We kind of gave a sense of all the things that have, I think, have been a very big shaping instrument for you. And
Mhm.
then now in the role that you are at half days, and that it's probably very much demanding a lot of outward leadership and clarity on your part. You are chief of staff and all that that brings. So, what are some of the practices or truths that anchor you internally and allow you to show up embodied in presence, purpose, and poise on the outside?
Well, I really hope I show up that way. I'm sure I don't every single day.
Well, yes, you're human, but I know that that's probably
Yeah.
something that you are very intentional about. So,
Yeah. I think a lot of what I learned in college, as I talked about, has really continued to shape me. And I think it's on both sides, both in terms of what I expect sort of or want from myself, and also what I expect and want from others. And in terms of myself, I like always try to remind myself to trust my instincts and trust my gut. And of course, there's always like background work to be done. There's research, like you have to actually do the work to follow your gut instinct. But there have been so many times professionally where something just feels a little bit off. And
Mhm.
I think following your instinct in situations like that is really important and listening to yourself and not like tampering down the things that feel a little weird in a professional situation because usually that leads to something much bigger.
Mhm.
Um, and I think in terms of leading other people, I always try to remember just like how much people might have going on that you have absolutely no idea about. And I think it is really important when it comes to leading, especially when you tend to be stepping in maybe from the outside, like to come in January as the chief of staff and then have all this responsibility. Like to build trust with people, it really requires a lot of just trying to meet them where they are and knowing that they've gotten to the place they are because they're good at what they do and if there's like a bad day or there's something they don't know or whatever, like there are so many factors that play into that. And we're all human. So really trying to connect with people on that human level and like lead from that place is really important to me.
Mhm.
And I would just say on a very, very like tactical level, a lot of the practices that I learned in my like healing journey are still the things that center me today. So I am still like very focused every day on moving my body and preferably outside, like just doing something where I'm like breathing fresh air is so important to me. I just find that it really helps to clear like 99% of what I'm worried about on any given day.
It's
And I,
perspective shifting for sure, and
for sure,
physiology shifting. I mean,
yeah,
physiologically, yeah.
yeah.
The bolder air is probably really clarifying.
I know, yeah.
Uh,
Compared to the Midwest air, it's a
yes,
little
I think it's a
different.
little different. Anyway, we
Um,
digress. Go ahead.
yeah, and
Uh,
I'm so lucky for that. That's one of the reasons why I love living in
yeah.
Colorado. And then
Mhm.
I also just I like really try to take care of myself in the way that I eat and sleep and things like that. And I think I used to be a lot more focused on those than my peers. Like when I was in my 20s and I was the one who was like, I have to get 8 hours and I have to eat
Mm.
meals a day and all that stuff, people were like, you're crazy. And now it's kind of funny because everyone's coming around to it. And all of a sudden, all my friends are like,
Uh-huh.
it's amazing, like how much
Uh-huh.
better I feel when I get 8 hours of sleep, or
Uh-huh.
like when now that I'm eating breakfast or all these things. So it's
Mhm.
no longer weird. It was weird in my 20s, and now it's just like, yeah, this is like what it takes to feel your best. So I
Yeah.
really anchor myself in those things.
Yeah. I noticed the aura ring going
Yeah,
on. So I'm
always.
sure you're aware of your REM and your deep sleep and
Yeah,
your readiness for the day.
always.
Heart rate variability, all those fun things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild when you have something like that to be able to track and the awareness around what might be the common denominator when you don't necessarily get that kind of deep, restorative, replenishing rest. I think that's the foundation. If we can get good rest, then everything else kind of follows suit. But typically, when we get stressed, we tend to exacerbate the stress by not really taking as good a care of ourselves and
Right.
things can go by the wayside. So you mentioned what you eat and the movement of your body and the sleep. What else would you say in terms of practices and just things you do for yourself, even with mindset, that would be something that anchors you and can help you ground when you otherwise might get activated or triggered?
I will say honestly, moving my body is like the biggest part of it. But for me, a lot of times it looks like a walk without headphones is the big one. If I really feel myself getting activated, it's like just leave your phone at home and go walk outside for as long as it takes for you to feel better. And it's
Mhm.
kind of remarkable for me how quickly that happens. Like I think a lot of us are so conditioned to just keep moving that we won't let ourselves like complete the circle. I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do, but like when you have an emotion and if you don't complete the cycle of like processing it, it just festers and it keeps like going like
Mhm.
this kind of
Well, it
in
lodges in the body.
it
It's and
exactly.
feelings are different than thoughts. So if I feel upset or I feel like this person is mad at me, that's a thought that then
Yeah,
exacerbates the feeling, which is maybe feeling upset. There is upset, but the
yeah,
the thoughts and the feelings all go hand in hand. So
yeah.
yes.
That's a good point. I would say in terms of like when my thoughts are going a little crazy,
Hmm.
I like to lay out the facts and
Hmm.
really try to
It's
talk to myself
beautiful.
about like what I know and what I don't know.
Hmm.
And like I'm very prone to thinking someone is like mad at me or that I've done something wrong in a situation and
Hmm.
I've made someone upset. And then if I can kind of then I start to feel panicked or whatever.
Hmm.
And if I can take myself on that walk on my own and I can just kind of say like, okay, here's the evidence. Like I didn't actually do anything wrong, number one. And then number two, like there are all these other things that might be going on in the person's life or whatever. And if I'm still really upset about it, like I've worked really hard on just actually talking to people about something that might be upsetting me or festering in some way,
Mm.
um, which was really uncomfortable for me throughout all of my life until now, and honestly still is. But I've just learned that like if I can say the thing that's making me uncomfortable or that I feel is bothering me, it just is the only way to make it go away. And having relationships where you feel comfortable having those conversations is really important to me now.
I think taking the personal responsibility for what you're feeling in a way where you've got that TLC for yourself, but it is, I think what you've just said, and there's just a sentence I always tell my clients. It's like when you said ABC or when you did ABC, I felt
Right.
ABC.
Right.
And what that creates is an ability to have an exchange, and you're communicating from where you're coming, but you're not saying to them, you caused this, you're the
Right.
problem, and you need to stop or you need to change for me to be okay. It's more of, wow, that really activated me. That triggered me. And for you, trigger sounds like when you think you might have disappointed someone or someone is upset with you. And
Yeah.
all of this originates when we were little people. It's crazy how
Mhm.
the things as little people that what we picked up in our environments, how we adapted, compensated, all the things, and how we as adults, it's like we're all these little kids running around in these adult bodies,
I
still
know.
reacting, right? To
I know.
life and the things that do bring up in us these things that there's fear. And I think that's what we've probably in scarcity and lack, right? It's like what happened to us when we were little people and how egocentric we are and how we make everything mean about us. And if someone's in a bad mood, we're like, oh my God, I'm a bad person because this person didn't quite.
Right.
Does, does that really, you relate? Yeah. So and there's a lot, when I've been doing this work for myself and also with my clients, it's not like we have recollection of all of these things in a way to say, oh, yeah, I remember when this happened, this happened, this happened. We don't really know that. But what
Mhm.
we do know is when we do get activated and triggered, there are common patterns, common themes. And so it gives us a whole lot of information that we probably have not even brought to conscious awareness.
For sure. And I think the more that I have invited myself to look at the patterns of what I'm experiencing, the more clear it becomes of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if I ignore these little ways that I'm feeling for a month, then of course it's going to bubble up. Or,
Hmm. Right?
I know that I'm always more sensitive about like certain things in my friendships and my very good friends. I can just tell them that, and then they
Hmm.
know, and then they just like are. It's like no problem for them to like plan around that or act around that in a little way that makes me feel so much better.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also like really beautiful when you grow up and are able to express that. And then you see people do the things that you like express to them. This would make me feel a lot better if you did this. Like to just see that in adult relationships, people will be like, oh, yeah, like if that will make you feel better, it's absolutely no problem for me. And
Hmm.
like, thank you for telling me. And I would like to be a better friend or partner or whatever to you. That's just like really beautiful and not something that you typically experience in your, teens and 20s, I think, when you're having those kinds of conversations.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, and I think when you're in the business world and the professional realm, the more you have those skills in both in your personal life. And I think again, I would offer my sense is your ability to lead is probably exceptional based on who you are and how you've been wired, but also what you've experienced. And you're able to probably empathize and hear and listen and both yourself and then you help others ground. It's such a key for really powerful leaders out there. So I'm glad you're in a leadership role.
Thank
So,
you.
how would you say your relationship with yourself has evolved, Liz? And how has that shaped the way you love and connect and let yourself be seen in friendship and love and leadership? We can take it wherever you want to go.
Well, I think it's really beautiful to see all the different ways in which this sort of like belief in myself has kind of radiated into different parts of my life over the last 10 years. I think I really learned it in the health sphere, and then I've just had to kind of continue to bring it into other areas where it was a lot less present than I would have hoped it was from the beginning. So like we talked about dating in your 20s, and I think like trusting my gut on people and kind of trusting that like there was going to be my person out there was a lot harder than I thought it would have been for someone who like had this very deep sense of self. And so you like grow and you really kind of start to see that in these other areas of your life. I think my professional life, I've always felt very confident in what I could contribute, but I think the past few years have really challenged me to say, like, how do I find a career that feels very purposeful, but also like really lights me up?
Mhm,
Um, and it took me a while to get there. I really feel like I've found that with half days. So I think just like watching how that plays out in different areas of life and like building the confidence in each of those has been
mhm,
really powerful for me and has really just strengthened like my connection with myself and my trust in myself.
mhm.
And when that happens, I believe it's like impossible to ignore for other people. I believe that's the reason why I've attracted in like better friends as I've gotten older and like such a great partner only in the last year of my life is like really coming into who I am and trusting myself in these different areas of my life and feeling confident saying like that something isn't for me or that, this is this thing that really lights me up, even if it's not something that lights other people up. And the confidence to do that is actually ultimately what attracts people to you. And it's kind of hard to tell yourself that when like whatever it is that you feel might be different or unpopular for whatever reason. Um, but I just feel like in the last, year or so of my life, I've just seen all the fruits of like me being confident in myself, just developing into the strongest relationships and like incredible job and all these things that I was always on my path towards, I believe, but to like really see it all come into fruition has been really beautiful and fun.
I love to think about it like it's a co-creation, you and the universe, you and
Yeah.
you and God and
Yeah.
the higher, just higher power. And I think there is something so beautiful about that flow. Once you align, and I think that's the inside outside kind of alignment that, so often we talk about in this podcast is just that sense of our outsides can be really impressive and sparkly and shiny, but what's going on our insides? And are we living in alignment and in our value system? And are
Yeah.
we doing the things like you just mentioned, being, the joy and finding the joy and doing something that you're both good at and you find ways to serve
Mhm.
and the greater whole. And I think there's so much meaning and purpose in that. But there's a lot of people who don't really know what lights them up and what they are even really interested in. So what would you offer to those young people out there who are still in process of figuring that out?
The first thing I would say is I think all of us are always in process of figuring that out. And there's probably like 0.1% of people that find what they're passionate about very, very early and stick with it forever and continue to be passionate about it. My dad is probably the one example I can think of.
Hmm,
But I think most people go through many different
that's
phases
so good.
of their
Yes,
life
dear
and
dad.
career and I have been so passionate about every step along my journey.
Mhm,
And when I start to feel that passion fade for whatever reason, I used to be like very worried about that. Or thinking like, oh, it just is kind of a blip and it will come back or whatever that is. And now I just kind of follow it. Like I'm like my intuition and my gut hasn't led me wrong about these things when you feel such a strong calling to something, or when it kind of just feels like all the stars are aligning for you, to your point about the universe co-creating, like
mhm,
you don't have to take that opportunity that the universe is putting in front of you, but like if it's there and you're feeling so called to it, like why not try it? And I think that's probably like the best advice I could give to someone who's young is just like there is no harm in feeling like you're called to something and trying it and then deciding that's not what you're passionate about, whether that's a month in or a year in or 10 years in. Like people tend to change their minds. And I would say I've had like five careers that feel very, very different to me. But the through line of all of them is that I'm really passionate about helping other people. And for a lot of my career, that was kids. And then I feel like in the later phases of my career, it's been more about women. And I've like connected to a new passion that I've made since living in Colorado with the outdoors. And it just felt so right to me at this point in my life with that passion being so strong and my passion for serving women being so strong. But it's nowhere near where I thought I would be 5 years ago. And I think that's totally okay. Like it's okay to continue to follow the doors that the universe opens for you if those are the ones you feel called to go through.
mhm. And I also think you learned so much about what maybe you don't want by doing things and by exploring and by discovering. And it's all part of that process that I think a lot of young people are afraid to step into. They
Yeah.
want the sure thing or the thing that I think in terms of societally what is being pushed and that's the path to go. But often I hear this internal struggle of like, I don't really know if this is what I want to do, but I have no idea what else I could do. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure you felt that.
Oh, for sure. Like when you aren't sure what you want to do, I don't think that means you have to quit whatever you're currently doing and like go on an epic travel journey to find that or whatever that is. Like I think that's very popular now and people sort of feel like they have to like go through this massive concentrated period of finding themselves. And I think my experience has been that that is an ongoing thing that happens throughout your entire life. And if you continue to be curious about yourself and what's lighting you up and be curious about the world around you and learn from the different experiences you're having, like that will just be a constant evolution. Like there are always benefits and drawbacks of this. Like, could I have a potentially different, like higher title or higher compensation if I had stayed at one role for 7 years and like really just committed to it, even though it wasn't what I was passionate about 100%. Um, I'm so much happier because I have not done that.
Hmm.
It just feels so clear to me that I'm doing, what I'm excited about, even though it looks different than what I maybe expected. And so I think being open to that is the most important thing and just staying curious about it.
Hmm. Yeah, which segues nicely into I would ask, what do you feel like you're most curious about right now in your own becoming? And what's lighting you up? And then what's asking more for your attention?
Yeah. This one was kind of funny for me because I could take it so many different directions. I think I feel so excited about my new job right now. And I feel like a big thing that's asking for my attention is just sort of like, what would it look like to really be all in on this industry and job that is very new for me, but like very exciting. And that I feel so passionate about exploring, even though, again, it's very different from what I expected. So I think a big piece of it is like, what does it look like for me to be here and be all in if I am here in 2 years, 5 years, like kind of trying to figure that out. I feel like a lot of excitement about that. Um, but the other piece of it is also that this is the first time I've had like a partner that I'm really excited about, and like our next phases of life are something that's really exciting me. So it's also the first time where I'm like, oh, like the decisions I make about my career are also very highly intertwined with the decisions that I'm probably going to make about like having a family and moving into that phase of my life, which feels like it snuck up on me really quickly.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, dear Liz. It's all been in process. It's all been happening
yeah,
behind the scenes.
that's always how it
It's
goes.
magical. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm excited about that too. And that's definitely it's like a fun place to have excitement and curiosity and energy going towards like what that relationship and what that part of my life will look like.
Hmm. And I guess the final question in all of this is when you think about what you have shed, and maybe what you're no longer bringing with you, would you be able to share with our listeners a little bit about that and what you no longer need?
Yeah. I think in my 20s in particular, I felt a lot of heaviness about what I had experienced. And I think I felt a really like a deep need to sort of like be seen and be heard about the experience that I had. And just all my health stuff. I felt like that was like such a formative part of me. And it's been a sort of interesting thing for me over the last year or so to feel like it's not a big part of me anymore. Not to say that health isn't, because health is always now, it's just something I'm so passionate about. Like that will always be a part of who I am. But I feel like I'm really shedding the heaviness of what I went through and seeing it much more kind of like from the outside looking in of like, I have a lot of compassion for myself and what I experienced and like, thank goodness I experienced all of that because I am who I am today. And I'm really grateful for that. And I don't feel the same sort of heaviness is the best way I can feel to describe it about that experience. So I think leaving that and then just sort of all of the associated insecurities and kind of like sadness that I didn't have like the same experience of my 20s that a lot of my peers had. I just feel all of that is very far behind me because I'm so happy with where I am in my life now. And so the sadness and the heaviness and resent even of like what I experienced is no longer there.
That's such a powerful awareness. I think also listening to you makes me think about identity and how that being a period of your life where that was strongly part of your identity. And I
Mm,
think the shedding is letting go of that and also recognizing the power of it and the formation of it and that it is part of your story and you get to choose the story you have about it. It's no longer. And as you say, focusing on the facts, I like that. You mentioned that earlier. And I think when we think about the stories we want to tell, because we can't change our past, but we can change our story about it. And that requires a process. But it's a very thoughtful, intentional, and important process because it will very much impact how we experience it.
yeah.
So, and that sounds like you've been doing that.
Yeah. And I like a little tip I would give people is if you're trying to rewrite your story, just like try telling it differently to someone that it doesn't matter. Like if you
That's
are
so good.
dating, like tell your story a little bit differently to someone that you're on that first date with. And maybe it kind of becomes your reality or maybe it doesn't. And I think I was just kind of starting to like experiment with that probably in the year before I met Ben of just being like, I don't think it feels so heavy anymore. Like I think I can just be like, yeah, my college years were a little different than everyone else's. Here's who I am now. Like it just didn't feel as much of a big deal for me. And kind of trying out that story on different people and trying it on and seeing how it fit made me feel a lot more confident to like adopt it as my own.
I think this is so powerful too, because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about how the version of you with Ben, you're
Mhm.
showing up fully, wholly, unabashedly you.
Yeah.
And a person like a Ben comes along. I mean, again, universe, source, higher power, whatever, however we want to think about this, like it's alignment. And
Yeah.
as you're aligning, you have come across a human that is able to hold that and be with that. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
kind of it's remarkable how that all works. You know how you think about the masterpiece and you think about the David and you think about Michelangelo, and I was thinking, my thinking is we all have the masterpiece inside of us, and
Mhm.
we've got a lot of excavating to kind of get back to us. She's
Yeah.
in there, he's in there. It's not out there, and it's not in another person. It's what that person mirrors back to us, who we are, right? So it's kind of beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And I think that's one of the most fun parts of growing up. That feels
Yeah.
like really hard when you're in the midst of it and you feel like you're just like digging so hard to
Right.
find the masterpiece.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
now I'm like, oh, how incredible to feel like I've found this one part of myself, but also just have a little bit more perspective to say, like, what might the next 10, 20, 30 years bring, and
Mhm.
have it be really exciting and positive and not like scary or daunting.
Yeah, and welcome all parts of you, right? So all the scared and insecure parts as much as the evolved and confident parts. It's like all parts of us belong. And the more I think we engage with life from that place and with ourselves most especially, it's not like we're hiding anything ever anymore. It's
Right.
more of I'm all here and let's go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I adore you. I thank you for
Same.
this opportunity and for this visit. It's really a delight, and I miss our dinners, so this is kind of
Me
like a dinner
too.
for me. But when you're in town, if you're, I know you've got a whole lot of people and things, but I would love to see you
I
and
would
cross
love to
paths.
see you.
So
Yes. Thank you.
I continue to weave. Yes, and weave your magic in this world and be so good to yourself and love, love, love all
Thank
things.
you.
So, okay, so much love.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.